All right, Andy. We had to suffer through two NFC East teams battling in the NFC Championship game. Ended up going the way we kind of thought. Eagles take care of the Commanders a year ahead of schedule, maybe 2 years ahead of schedule for the Washington Football Club. But now here we are. It's the Chiefs. It's the Eagles. Where do you stand high level on this game? Kicking off here. We're going to post this thing as fast as we can. Probably kicking off in about 5 hours by the time you see this episode. Believe in the Kansas Chiefs just aren't that good of a team, really, even though they once again had a dominant record and once again are here in the Super Bowl. Are you buying into the idea that this team is gettable, as they say for Philadelphia?
It's a simple equation for me.
Oh, simple
I
math.
can't, I've told you this before. I told you last postseason when we were making all of our predictions and picks, when it felt
That's
like,
true.
oh, the Chiefs are not very good this year. I just looked at you and I said, I can't bet against Patrick Mahomes until I see him lose again. And I still
That's right.
feel the same way where it's like, wow, the Eagles' offensive line is amazing. Saquon Barkley is amazing. They have two stud wide receivers. Their defense was number one in a bunch of metrics for the Philadelphia Eagles. And yet, I look
Yep.
across and I say, Patrick Mahomes is the equalizer to all of this. Steve Spagnuolo is an equalizer to all of this. Andy Reid, as the head coach, is an equalizer to all of this. And until I can watch in a big spot Patrick Mahomes crumble and the pressure be too much for him, I
Sure.
cannot bet against the Kansas City Chiefs.
No, it's really hard to do, and it doesn't hurt that it's the Eagles are playing against, so like you don't have to have any love loss about this other team coming in and not being able to win. It is hard to do, man. You said it all last season, and you were and obviously proven correct in that regard. Like it's really hard to think. Not even about. It's not hard to root against. Just hard to think that the Chiefs aren't going to win because when they're there, they typically win, right? And we've seen all those stats about how Mahomes plays when it comes to one possession games and fourth quarters. He always seems to be in that big spot. And I will say, from a high level, I think first of all, early on in this game, if Saquon's able to break off a couple of those big runs that we've seen all throughout the playoffs for him, that can be kind of a narrative shifter here, right? If he can do that, Kansas City can shut that down and make it more of a Jalen Hurts game, right? If you're telling me it's the fourth quarter, and I think this will be a good game, a close game, all those things. If we're in the fourth quarter and it comes down to the last few minutes, Mahomes has the ball. I believe that he may be able to go down and drive, although Buffalo was able to hold him to a field goal. So there was a chance there in the AFC Championship. I believe that Mahomes can go down the field and put the points on the board. If it ends up being with Jalen Hurts with the ball in his hands, I think we all have that bigger question mark, regardless of him being an Eagle or not. We all go, I don't know. Do we think that that's possible? That Jalen Hurts, with everything on him, can go out and accomplish that? And then it's the Steve Spagnuolo matchup and how good he was in that Buffalo game as well when it came down to it. I find it fascinating, man. End of the day, I hope it ends up being a very good game ultimately. But yeah, it's really hard, man. There's too much stacked up pedigree here on the Kansas City Chiefs side. And probably here's the one thing I'll ask you. How is it concerning that when you do look at the Philadelphia, you go, it's one of the best offensive lines. It's one of the best defensive lines. This is a very good Eagles team. I do think all of the pedigree is very true for Kansas City. And I just wonder a little bit if it's overshadowing. Like, this is a very good team. And sometimes a nut job head coach kind of clouds you a little bit to how good Philly is.
Well, so the interesting stat that's been tossed around on countless talk shows and pundits talking about the game
Yes.
is Vic Fangio and his success against Patrick Mahomes. Vic
Sure.
Fangio has been the defensive coordinator at a whole host of places, but most recently Denver Broncos, Miami Dolphins, Philadelphia Eagles. Vic Fangio is 0-8 against Patrick Mahomes led offenses. So he's never won a game against Patrick Mahomes. So what does that tell you? It tells you whatever style of play he plays, which is generally cover two, don't let the big play over the top beat you, make the player make the plays in front of you every single time. Well, guess what? Patrick Mahomes is the one guy that makes the right play at the right time every single time. And I think
Yeah.
it's kind of funny that when you think about his too high safety look and keeping everything in front of you, Patrick Mahomes thrives on that. That's how Travis Kelce made his name. Are those little
Yeah.
catches in those cracks and crevices over the middle? We don't have Tyreek Hill here anymore. It's not about getting behind the defense and over the top for Mahomes. He's like, I'm totally fine taking 6 to 8 yards on any play that you give me, and I will figure out a way to get us in the end zone. So, Adam, for me, I just keep going back to I don't know if the Eagles defense, for as good as it is going to be able to stop Mahomes from doing what he wants to do.
Yeah, and you know, you mentioned not getting over the top with the Tyreek Hill, but then obviously you have Xavier Worthy and the ball in his hands, right? Like the explosive plays don't need to be 40 yards down the field. They can be 7 yards from the line of scrimmage, but then still end up being 40 yards down the field. So it's hard in that regard. I know that Brown had a better game in the NFC Championship, you know, a few more plays. There was some of that going on as well throughout the playoffs too. Like that part of it is hard for me to try to reconcile as well, because there's times when I look at Philadelphia. And by the way, I mean, listen, if Saquon Barkley's going off, he's going off, right? But there's just times when I look at Philadelphia and I'm not sure. I have less questions offensively if you take something away. And it's never a strong case to make that, well, you know, there's not necessarily all the elite talents that you think of for Kansas City that you would in years past. When you look at Philly, you go Saquon Barkley, AJ Brown, and Devontae Smith. Like you can go down the list and be like, yeah, there's a lot of weapons. But there's some stock that I do put in the fact that, yes, without having all of the big name brands that we maybe are used to with Kansas City, here they are still again, right? So it doesn't have to be that player X needs to have that level of success in order for the team to be successful. Go back to Saquon, right? If they somehow shut down Saquon, which I would be impressed if they were able to do that for a full game. But if they did, even with Brown and with Smith, you'd go, okay, this has to look different now, right? You need to figure out something different. More pressure goes onto Jalen Hurts' shoulders. So that part of it is going to be fascinating to me. And it's where I think early game scripts do matter. And the one thing, who do you think has the better like explosive ability here? Before we get, I want to just hit a couple of like the bets and some things that we like. But who do you think has the more explosive play ability? Like, is it just like, yeah, well, listen, it's Saquon Barkley, it's Smith, it's Brown. It's very easy to pick them in that regard, because that's the down 10, 65-yard run. Saquon Barkley just brought you right back in the game, right? Like I do think Philly can probably claw back more readily than KC could, and that might be an early narrative. If Philly gets up quick, then there's certainly something different there for Kansas City.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Adam, because I kind of look at it and say the weapons on Philadelphia are certainly more explosive across the board as a whole. But
Yep.
I look at it and say Patrick Mahomes is the one that can wipe away mistakes that are made on the defensive side, or any way that you think about it. Jalen Hurts can use his legs to be able to rush. I anticipate him getting 10 plus carries in this game to be able to continue to move the chains. It is a threat knowing that Saquon Barkley is a home run hitter in the backfield at all times. But yeah, it's funny because if either team was trailing, I still feel like the Chiefs have a better chance to come back and win, even though the Eagles have more explosive playmakers on their offense that would make you think that they could get points back quickly. Now,
Yeah.
I just maybe it's just as simple as I'm just putting so much stock in Patrick Mahomes being one of the top 3 greatest NFL quarterbacks that I've ever seen play football. But it's so difficult when he looks so calm and composed and gets the ball out of his hands, and he never makes the huge mistake to sit here and say, I'd be nervous if they were down 7-0. I'd be nervous if they're down 10-0. He's just, I mean, you obviously feel more confident in Mahomes, but it sounds like, do you feel like the Eagles just have an abundance, an embarrassment of riches to the point where like Mahomes could be great, but
Yeah.
this you're talking about all pros and pro bowlers at every single level for the Eagles.
3 games, 442 yards, 6.7 yards per carry, 4 rushes over 20 plus yards, 5 touchdowns, 147 yards a game. That's Saquon Barkley in the 3 games of the playoffs so far. By the way, in 3 games, only had to throw 69 passes for Jalen Hurts, completed almost 70%, 7.3 yards per clip, right? Under 170 yards a game. Okay, fine. The rating, 105. Same rating that Patrick Mahomes has through his 2 games in the playoffs, right? Throwing for over 200 yards in these games. You look inside that running back field for Kansas City, and you see Kareem Hunt, who's come on and looked good, right? 108 yards. They have 185 yards through 2 games total in their run game, right? And Patrick Mahomes is not necessarily the scrambling guy, although we know he'll take advantage of some of those. So yeah, the legs of Jalen Hurts matters in this, right? He's run for 122 yards in 3 games in the playoffs. It matters how good Saquon Barkley has been. And then you mentioned they've got 3 120-plus yard receivers in the playoffs so far, and that's only with A.J. Brown having 9 receptions on 18 targets, right? So, and Goddard has been a big factor here. So it is, man, on paper, I'm probably rooting and picking a little bit more with my heart than my head in this game, because there's a lot of reasons and a lot of names and a lot of weapons to look at the Philadelphia Eagles and go, they are the more talented team. Like, you can make that case. They're the more talented quarterback, but they're probably, I think you would agree, like, they're the more talented team from a pure player standpoint. It comes down to coaching, and it comes down to who has the better QB, and can you be always in a point in this game where the better QB will be the deciding factor? If that's the case, it's Mahomes, it's the Chiefs, right? Any other game script could get a little bit funky here. So I think the spread's still 1.5, right?
Spread is still 1.5. Feels like it's about time for those predictions, Adam. It
Oh,
sounds
baby,
like
go
you're
ahead.
leaning one way potentially, but you keep going back to like, man, that team is stacked on the other
They
side.
really are.
And then you probably have the same angel devil of like, but it's a division rival. I don't want to pick them because I also don't want to see them win, but I also like being right when it comes to predictions. So,
That's usually
all right.
the most important thing is being right. I mean, that's really what
Yes,
it
of
comes down
course.
to for me.
So hit me with prediction on the game, who wins,
Yeah.
and if you have any players to look out for, dark horse, Super Bowl MVP, or best wager of the game, any of that stuff, feel free to hit me with it.
Yeah, I'll tell you right up front. I'm going to pick the Chiefs to win this game. I think it's you want to put it in like this could be even like it's so bad because the over-under is like 42. So this could be like 2017. Makes a lot of sense. That has nothing to do with the fact that I have 7 for Philly and I have 0 for the Chiefs when it comes to my Super Bowl. Something like that, 27-20 could make sense too, right? I'll catch it on the reverse. It's no big deal. I think that makes sense. So I would lay the 1.5 if that's what it came down to. From a sleeper kind of pick, I think an interesting one in this one here might be something like a Noah Gray anytime touchdown. I like the idea of something a little bit slippery here for Kansas City on the offensive side of the ball. Going to be a lot of tension on Travis Kelce, a lot of attention on some of those other weapons there. I like that one. And you could probably tell me where the over-under is for Kareem Hunt on receiving yards. I probably would like that too on the Kansas City side.
Adam, we didn't even
Yes.
talk about this beforehand.
Oh, this is so good. I hope yeah.
My absolute favorite bet on the entire board is Kareem Hunt over receiving yards. It is literally, it was placed on Wednesday. That's how confident I felt in this. Take a guess. What do you think his over under receiving yards is in this game?
Oh, let me go ahead and take a look here real quick. I will use this reference point. Well, he has 2 catches on 2 targets for 8 yards through the 2 games in the playoffs. I'm going to say they said it's somewhere like, let's say 24.5.
It's 6.5.
Oh my God, they don't even, wow. Because I was, you know what I mean? Like, I know the numbers say negatively,
Right.
but in my mind, like, this feels like a part of this game for the Kansas City Chiefs. Wow. Wait. Well, I shot the moon completely off. Yeah, I would punish.
You're like even better. You're like, I like it even better now. And Adam, it's the same logic that you have in terms of, we know the Vic Fangio defense. We know that they're going to try to get pressure on the defensive front. They will send some pressures, but they're going to stick in cover too. Every time Mahomes gets rushed, you know he's going to be looking for Kareem Hunt as a little dump off. And like, for 6.5 yards, it's literally one dump off for 8 yards, and you move on, and you're like, thank you very much. So for me, I am all over that one. You and I, great minds think alike on that, Adam.
Yeah, and then listen, he only averaged a couple catches a game in the 13 that he played this regular season, but 176 yards and 7.7 yards per catch, right? So there's something to think about right there. Eagles side, and we'll give you your pick here first. Are you taking the Chiefs as well? You can't root against Patrick Mahomes until he shows you that he can't be trusted.
Well, it's not that I won't root against Patrick Mahomes. I will never pick against Patrick Mahomes. But it makes it a lot easier when they're playing the Philadelphia Eagles to pick the other team. And so maybe there's a little bit of bias here that, in fact, it is Philadelphia. Maybe there's a little bias because Patrick Mahomes just wins all the time. But I've got the Chiefs winning. I've got the score 27-23. It looks like the over-under is 48.5. I think it could go a little bit above that potentially, depending on if this turns into a shootout. But yeah, I just give me the better quarterback that has shown that in clutch moments delivers virtually every single time. It's really uncanny, his ability to be able to do that. And so the longer the game stays one possession either way, the more you got to like the Kansas City Chiefs in this one, because if it's one possession, are you 100% confident that Jalen Hurts is going to get the ball to the right person or make the right key decision towards the end of the game? I'm not. He's been very good. He's been stable. You mentioned his passer rating, but there's just something in the back of my mind that says, when all the chips are on the table, who's the guy that you want the ball with, and who are you confident that will deliver in this game? That to me is the Kansas City offense.
Yeah, I think so too. Goddard, by the way, on the flip side for the Eagles, he's plus 333 for an anytime touchdown score. That's not a bad little pickup there. You want to go a little bit deeper, maybe with Dotson, he's 13-1 there. And then I think it's like the first touchdown scorer, it's plus like 400 for Barkley, and even a little bit more for, say, Jalen Hurts. That's always a funky one because it means, who got the ball first and how does that play out? But because of how strong Barkley has been over the course of these playoffs and how much they're going to rely on him, you want to throw some. I mean, that's like really plus odds to have Philadelphia get the ball to start the game, have a good drive, break off a run, and maybe it all works out in the end where Kansas City wins, but not a bad look there as well. In the meantime, though, we're both on the side of the Kansas City Chiefs. We're both voting with our logic and also with our hearts. Big game for Saquon Barkley. Big, bright, beautiful future for him. Just not today. Just not when it comes to giving the Eagles a championship on a Sunday when the Giants have already certainly suffered enough this year. Get us on social, get us on YouTube, get us everywhere. We'll see you after the official end of the 2024-2025 season as we look ahead to the NFL draft. Until next time, until the best times, as Andrew Mackowitz would want, need, and nay, demand the people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.